So now let's move on and let's take a look at how we could add specialized language, linguistic meta language to descriptions. So what I want you to do here is to take a look at what you wrote about these sounds, sound and t, and compare with the descriptions that I'm going to provide here. If we begin on the column on the right, let's take a look at place of articulation. So where you have the sound what is the place of articulation? Is using the alveolar ridge? So do we call it alveolar, nasal, bilabial, fricative, stop? Uses two lips, so it's bilabial. But do you remember when you closed your nostrils and you couldn't pronounce the anymore? Well, that makes it nasal. Let's take a look at T in terms of place of articulation. Where is the T in English, the T in English done? Is it with the two lips? Try to do a T with the two lips. You can't, right? So the T is an alveolar sound. Its place of articulation is alveolar because the tongue, the tip of the tongue, is touching the alveolar ridge. It's also a stop. Do you remember closing your nostrils when pronouncing the t sound? You could pronounce it without any problem. That means that it's not nasal. It is a stop. Why do we call it a stop? Because the air kind of stops at the alveolar ridge. The final piece is voice. So we looked at place of articulation, alveolar, bilabial, manner of articulation, stop or nasal. And we are also going to look at, does it have voice? And this voice is the third characteristic of all consonants in all languages. So let's take a look at Is it voiced? Does it have voice? Or is it voiceless? This is why I asked you to cover your ears with your two fingers. Do it again. T. Clearly, is voiced. You could hear a very, very prominent sound inside of your head. The t is voiceless, doesn't have that sound. So we are ready to begin to describe these sounds as bilabial, nasal, voiced. So has the specific articulatory description of being bilabial, nasal, and voiced, where the place of articulation is described as bilabial, the manner of articulation is nasal, and the voicing or the voice is voiced. It does have voice. What about t? T is an alveolar sound in terms of place of articulation. It's a stop in terms of a manner of articulation. And finally, it is voiceless in terms of voice. This is very, very important because sometimes we have students that have approximations of pronunciations. Let's take a look at some contrasts between English and Spanish. As we see, the English um, is alveolar, stop, voiceless. Now notice that I included H, a superscript H there. And this is because English t in initial position is aspirated. That means that you not only pronounce the sound, but you also release air. T. That's why it sounds like that. T. In fact, if you put right now a paper in front of your mouth and say T, the paper should move. Spanish is different. As you could see, Spanish T is not aspirated. And the place of articulation is actually very different. Instead of the alveolar, it is dental. So it is pronounced in the teeth, not in the alveolar region. But still, it's a stop and voiceless. It is very, very possible that a Spanish speaker student will say, I am playing with my toys. That sounds almost right. However, because the speaker is not using the alveolar ridge to pronounce it, and is not using aspiration at the very beginning of the word, then it sounds different. In English, it would be toys. In Spanish, toys. So I want you to do this exercise. You will find this in the handout section. What I want you to do is to follow the 1, 2, 3 descriptions there. You are going to fill out the chart with the IPA symbols corresponding to the consonant sounds of American English. You should be able to find 26 of them. Now, how are you going to make some of the symbols with your keyword? What you need to do is to go to those sites that are listed there and just copy and paste the symbols into the Word document that has this same chart. After you have completed the 26 English consonant sounds, then go and write complete articulatory descriptions with place and manner of articulation and voicing for each of the English consonant sounds. What I'm talking about is to be able to tell me that for example, is bilabial nasal voiced, and that for example, is alveolar stop voiceless. Then, when you have done that, write your name and last name using IPA. Use the same website suggested above for specific sounds. Use the highlighted space above the chart to write your name in IPA. As you could see, this only deals with consonant sounds. All of your names are going to have vocalic sounds. Before you attempt to do this, let's have a little more practice. So write the articulatory descriptions for f and v, and match the terms you choose with characteristics in the third column as shown in the previous slide. So in a different piece of paper, just by looking at what you already know, try to challenge yourself and try to see what is f, what are the articulatory descriptions for f, and what are the articulatory descriptions for v. Stop the video now. the first thing you have to do is to find out the place of articulation. Where is it? V and v. As you could see, the place of articulation for both consonants is the same. Is the teeth, the upper teeth with the lower lip. So it's not bilabial because it doesn't have the two lips, but it's labiodental. So F or F is labiodental. What about the next characteristic? Manner of articulation. In terms of manner of articulation, we can say that it is not nasal because you close your nostrils and you can still pronounce it. And stop, it is not stop because the air actually doesn't stop. When the air doesn't stop and it can continue, you call that kind of sound a fricative. Fricative sounds can continue being produced and they don't change. You can produce a f as long as you have air, but you cannot pronounce a t. It continue the same t sound over a long period of time. What about voice? Put your fingers in your ears and pronounce f. Does it vibrate? Do you feel it? No, it is voiceless. So we have labiodental, fricative, voiceless. That is f. In terms of v, it's also labiodental, and it's also a fricative because you can continue it. V. However, it changes. When you put your fingers in your ears and you make the contrast between f and v sound, you will immediately see that v vibrates, but f doesn't. So we have the articulatory descriptions for two more right now. If you want to practice this much more, I invite you to go to this website. This website, as you could see, shows you all the stops in English. All these are all the stops, and they also tell you the place of articulation. It shows you all the fricatives, all the affricates, which are only two, nasals, liquids, and glide. This is covered in your reading. It also goes into place of articulation, so it could be bilabial, labiodental, lingual dental, alveolar, and it goes by voicing as well. So these are the voice sounds in English, and these are the voiceless sounds in English. As you could see, the combination of these already has the answers for what you have to do. So let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at the sh sound that we've been working on. So as you could see here, it's a fricative, voiceless, because it's voiceless. Fricative, voiceless. And you can see how it is pronounced here. If you want to see step by step, take a look at this and read this. The tip and the blade of the tongue are elevated into contact with the sides of the palate and teeth, leaving a flattened midline groove along the upper surface of the tongue. The lips may be slightly rounded and protruded, but the degree varies with phonetic context. And finally, the vocal folds are abducted. That means that they are still. And finally, the velopharyngeal port is closed. When that part opens is when you have a nasal sound. This is why this sound is not considered nasal, because that part, that organ there, directs the air across the vocal tract and away from the nasal tract that you see on the upper place of the diagram. You can study all of the sounds here, all of the consonant sounds, but also the vowels. But we will take a look at the vowels later. For what you have to do in your assignment for points 2 and 3, especially for the third, where you have to write your name and last name, names or last names in IPA, I am giving you this guide, which is also available in your reading and also available in the handouts section. So as you can see, for example, here is all the consonants, and of course right there is the sh sound. So you can see how the sh sound is as in ship, and the transcription of ship. But also there are other examples like shock, nation, mission, glacier, wish. Okay. The same is true with vowels. So the vowels are there as well. Try to figure out as much as you can your name and last names, at least. Okay? So, why is this important for students? I already signaled a little bit of the importance, but for example, in terms of the T sound, that we were talking about in English and Spanish, why is it useful to know the differences? How would a native Spanish speaker studying English benefit from explicit instruction of the contrast between the T sound in English and Spanish? How would a native English speaker studying Spanish would benefit from this instruction? Well, let's take a look. So in English, it's an alveolar stop voiceless. I forgot to put the aspiration there, but remember the superscript H. So we have the place of articulation, the manner of articulation, and the voicelessness in this case. So in English, we have a student, for example, that is studying Spanish. He might say, Tengo tres tomates. Why? Because the place of articulation and the aspiration is different for the beginning T sound in English. So when he or she is trying to pronounce the Spanish T, it is logical that that person uses the English T even if they are trying to speak in Spanish. As a consequence, it is not illogical to expect that students from a native English background will be pronouncing that phrase as tengo tres tomates. In Spanish, the T, initial T, is not alveolar and is not aspirated. It's dental and is not aspirated. As a consequence, if you pronounce the Spanish T in that sentence, you might actually be able to increase your pronunciation right away by saying, Tengo tres tomates. You see how different it sounds? Tengo tres tomates y tengo tres tomates. Of course, you could use the same idea with Spanish-speaking students, English. By the way, the T in English is very different from many other languages. So chances are that many other languages don't have aspiration at the very beginning. So this knowledge that you just had, this little example, could be applicable for any English language learners from a background that is not Spanish. This is applied linguistics. In this case, phonetics and phonology applied to teaching. So as you could understand, these could be a triple trouble for English language learners. The first one is the one that we've been talking about, which is the dental and aspirated pronunciation. So the person might say triple trouble. The second could be epenthesis. The epenthesis is defined as adding an extra sound to make it easy. In this case, you could expect that a student would say triple trouble. So you could see there's an added vowel, an added sound there in triple. Finally, there could be a possible metathesis. Peel and bill over there. Metathesis is the reorganization of sounds to make it easy. So instead of saying triple trouble, the person might say triple trouble. Okay, similar to epenthesis. The E and the L at the end are inverted to make it easier to pronounce.